And we are live.
All right.
What's up, Facebook family?
Yeah, what's up? What's up?
With it. And it's good to be here today. Definitely good to be here. Hope you guys are all joining us. If not, that's fine. Some of y'all will see it later. That's cool too. And just want to open up as I always do and just tell my brother, as I always do, it's always a pleasure to be anywhere that you are, brother.
Amen.
And,
likewise.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. You encourage me every day. As I always say, man, like the Apostle Paul said, man, every time I think about you, I pray for you. And I'm encouraged by you and by the stance that you take in your life with the issues, the love that you have for the people that's based on your, and let's make no mistake about it, the love that you have for people is based on your faith and belief in Jesus Christ.
That's right. I wouldn't care if I didn't have God.
And I think that's important to know. Yeah. I think I don't want people to ever get it twisted. Like, we're not trying to be ambiguous about what we believe, right?
Exactly.
But I think both of us agree that what you believe is going to show in your actions.
That's right.
So hopefully we won't have to do it. You shouldn't have to walk around and tell everybody I'm a Christian for them to believe or to know, right?
Exactly.
Your life should just show that. And so I thank God that your life does show that to me. And you are one of the first people that I met that actually took a public stance for these issues in the community with a love that I hadn't really seen before, with no motive,
Amen.
right?
Thank
No
you.
motive. It was just a pure, like, this is wrong. We need to get involved.
Yeah. And when I met you and saw, I said, oh man, he's a real one. I was like, okay. We missed each other when we got back in San Diego for a minute, but I was like, man, we got to, things you seen in Philadelphia. I was agreeing with. I said, oh, okay. It's like that. All right.
Yeah, man. Well, that's good, man. I really appreciate you today. And we'll talk about this as we get into it. Our discussion today is going to be about ADOS. And we'll both kind of share this is slavery. And then we're going to also talk about gun violence. This is so just campaign Moms Demand Action. And San Diegans for Gun Violence Prevention, all the work that they're doing in San Diego and actually across the whole nation to bring up the topic of gun violence and its seriousness. And so we just wanted to honor that movement honor this movement. Every week it's kind of like we try to do some type of, you know what I mean? I'm just kind of a t-shirt hog. So shout out to anybody that watches. If you are a part of a particular organization, particularly dealing with the unions, if you're unions or something with a cause that makes sense for us or whatever, we want to support you. The bishop is a 3X, biggest pastor,
2X,
3X, biggest preacher you ever seen in your life. No. I'm gonna give you that title, and I'm an XL. So we will definitely represent your stuff. So welcome everybody tonight. And I just, if we could, just in the beginning, I would like to bring up a couple of things that's not on, maybe one thing, but maybe two things that's not on our list to talk about. Well, actually, it is on our list. I put it on there. I'm sorry about that. I want to, and we'll end with that. We'll go in the order that we have today. So the order that we have today is, one, we're going to talk about American descendants of slavery. And should we pay attention to this? Is that something that we should pay attention to? And should we be making distinctions? Are there distinctions when people say that they're Black, people of color, African versus African American,
Black and brown?
Why is it important? And is it important to make the distinction? And we'll talk about that and why.
And it's not, and I think the other piece that we should touch with, I see a lot happening, especially on Twitter. If y'all not on Twitter, you need to get on Twitter, because that's where it's happening. It's very difficult to maneuver through it all and understand it all and really build an audience there, because you got to be a celebrity or some type of popular person. But once you get in on it, you'll be up on a lot of movements, a lot of things that's happening, because that's where it's happening at.
Got you. No, that's good.
Yeah.
We'll talk about gun violence prevention weekend. Actually, I put week, but it's weekend. What does this mean for our community? Because a lot of what we want to talk about is like about what's relevant to us here locally. Yeah. We can talk all the national stuff, and that's good to do. Right. It's good to be aware of what's going on nationally, but the truth is we need to mobilize and get involved here in our own city, and do what we can.
That's what I see it, man.
Yeah, that's all on the real. And
absolutely.
How can we support our activists is another thing.
Yeah.
We have the question is it fair that all that the activists do here in San Diego, that they got to do it all for free?
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair?
Exactly. Yeah.
Is that fair that people show up for court and show up to the police stations, take people to do IEPs and all, just all the things that a lot of the activists do here in San Diego? Is it fair that they have to do it for free? And the truth is that there's some people that don't have gas in their cars. There's people showing up to meetings whose cars is on E. There's people who show up to meetings not realizing that they sleep on somebody's couch. And the truth is that if you want to have effective activism, you have to have people that are full time on the ground that's doing this stuff. And so we have an ask for that to sort of stop the bleeding, if you will, for some of our activists.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know there's organizations here that is kind of involved in, but I think also have to start holding some of these state and national organizations and movements accountable, because San Diego tends to be looked over a lot. Okay. I got involved in this because where I live, District 8, over in the coast and all that, I felt my community was being neglected in San Diego. And so that's one of the things that really moved me to get involved in the process. But being involved in the process, I'm starting to see now that people overlook San Diego as a whole, so we have challenges on all types of fronts, because I'll talk with like someone like yourself, Southeast San Diego or District 4, and most of them, we're neglected too. So but we're neglected where. So now we're fighting over who's neglected the most, huh?
Yeah.
But I think it's very important, especially when you talk about resources and funding and different things like that. You can't do this work without it. And what I mean by that is that if you're going to have a real movement and you're going to be able to put a lot of dedicated time and effort into it, then you got to eat, man. That's the thing people don't understand. You got to eat, you got to make a living. And those that are working and trying to do this, it's kind of like a two jobs, right? And so you can't put a lot of time into it because you got to work around your family, your schedule, and everything else. So it is important, especially for those that have the passion to do this work. They should really, be supported and with the funding, resources, whatever they need to get this work done.
So and just in light of that, I'd love to bring up Brother Kent. You shared a photo about Brother Kent that the system Bonnie DeMonis gave Brother Kent the business 17 plus years ago. Dropped the hammer on this poor brother or whatever because she could. And a nonviolent offense, and gave the brother 75 to life. When really he just probably had a drug problem and just needed some type of assistance, right?
Right.
Gave him 75 to life. And the reason why I bring that up, one, is because just thank God the brother's home. I got a chance to meet him. Just a great brother, super humble. I loved him. What I'm saying? Like, it just was cool, man. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's a cool brother, and just very thankful to be home. But one of the things I thought about is that took time, right? Like I don't think people understand like what that means for you. Like, you are one of the activists that I'm talking about, right? You didn't, and let me just say this for the record: this was not something that like you and I, you didn't even know we was going to talk about this.
I saw it on.
We never talk about this. I don't.
Right.
I may have mentioned it. Whatever. I don't know, because that's something that I believe in. Let me plug our computer in because we about to die. I didn't realize that. You know what I'm saying? It just gave us the cold warning.
Hey, you better plug me up.
Plug it in. So, but let me just say this though, that you travel to Sacramento quite a bit. You was just in Chicago last week. You do a lot of things, man. You do a lot of work, and this is your work. You're a full-time pastor. Community service is a passion that you have. That is a part of your ministry. You pastor a small congregation that doesn't have, the resources to be able to support you full time. And just working to get Kent set free, the paperwork that's involved, the meetings that are involved, the calls, all the actual participation that's live, that means you have to be there, plus all the thought process that goes in from day to day and talking to him, and the mental part of the mental work that's done, that kind of the unseen stuff that people don't see, that is hard to quantify, the amount of time that you sit and contemplate what your best next move should be, all of that stuff, and you don't get compensated for that. And so yesterday I went to your church service. I must say, man, I loved it. I love how organized you preach. You got the points on there. You know what I'm saying? It was great. Good stuff. Good.
Thank you,
about getting rest. Thank God it was a great sermon. But one of the things you talked about yesterday was just it went right along with the whole idea of rest and trust in God, was that, you left a full-time job to be able to serve God. And I think there's something about our churches that say we're going to walk in faith. And
I learned what faith was when I stepped out in full-time ministry, especially when you have a small church that's already struggling financially. And, and I didn't just do it. I was like talking about doing it for a couple of years, man. I got to go full-time ministry, man. I got to focus more with God and prayer and, all the things I need to do. But the money, the finances were never like really there. And I told the Lord back in 2001, I said, in February 2002, I'm going full-time, Lord. And then it got around November of 2001. I was looking and I said, nah, I can't do this, Lord.
I think I'm tripping. Lord, you never called me out on the water, God.
In February, I got laid off laid off, whatever you want to call it, from my job. And I said, oh, Lord, you're trying to say so? I called my bishop and talked with him about it and stuff. And he was like, go for it, man. He said, that's what I did. I went for it and didn't look back. And so stepped out and didn't look back since then, as far as, going back to a secular job and things like that. But I learned faith, because when you step out in God and you trust God, God will take care of you. He will meet your needs. Like I was saying yesterday, people send checks in the mail, they show up, people see you somewhere and just hand you money and different things like that, because those that understand what you're going through, and when you're full-time and what that all take. If you have a mega church or several mid-sized church, several hundred members, and then you budget your money right, pastor have a salary and all that. We did all that when I first went full-time, but there was nothing there. I have a line item for a salary and all these type of things, and housing allowance and all that. But the actual fact is that the money don't come in like that. You know what I mean? But God has, the thing of it is, with faith, God has provided, and God has taken care of me in so many different ways, man. And I'm content from the perspective of, I want to go higher in God, but I'm content. It's kind of like Paul, no matter what state I'm in, I learned to be content. And I thank God what he's done for me, because I see people planning their retirement and looking at where all the money's going to come and how they're going to have this money come in before they go full time. And I didn't wait for none of that. I just stepped out in God. And so other people are missing it. I've seen miracles. I've seen God do some stuff, man, and my wife would tell you, just blown me away. And that's all because of faith and trusting in the Lord. Just think about the small little church I got. They don't, I mean, thank God for the miracle. They do look out for the pastor. God send you people that will look out for you too. And, but the small church that I have, we don't have those type of resources, but we got God, right? And so God did it, and then with the work we do in the community, every now and then some funding would come in. We get a little funding for mentoring, doing some mentoring work. And so, and then that's what I talked about in the article, as far as with the Calvit brand, getting more money for that, so that we can address more issues when it comes to the violence and different things like that.
Well, and I'm all about that, walking in faith. And just to end that, one of the things I want to do, I think that's great. And that's what we need to do. I also think it's important for folks to realize that we need to be a support. We need to support, not just you, but I mean, we have a lot of activists on, and I don't want to call their names out and put them on blast or whatever, but believe me when I tell you, there's people out here that, I mean, in my family, we've given thousands already, you know, and it's not, and it ain't like I got it. I'm a sole,
I'm
a sole provider in my home. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
I don't, you know, my wife's job is here at the house, and she's a stay-at-home mom by the grace of God. I mean, so we did.
What did they call it yesterday? Were you there when we were talking about that? They call it something engineering. Because I mentioned stay-home mom.
Family engineering or some
type of engineering.
Well,
I said, okay, I like that too.
I'm the sole provider here, and so we don't have it. But I also realize that there's other people that. So anyway, what I want to ask, and this is something I think would work, and it really to help to spread the load. Something simple like, what if we could get 1,000 people to just give $10, 1,000, and we're not looking to pay people's salaries, right? But we got folks who can't pay their cell phone bill. Yeah. We got folks that don't have gas for their car. They show up to court to advocate in a real way, not being nosy. Home, like, man, and they gaslight us on. We got folks living on. We got folks living on people's couches, stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so
doing this work and stuff. I mean, I know a lot of times people have issues with Reverend Shane here, but he was doing a lot of this work and sleeping in his car one time, you know, and so people don't really realize that some of the things that folks do, you know, because they, you know, some people might have ulterior motives, but I think most time people doing what they have a passion for and they love and care about people, want to make a difference.
And when you're living in a position where you don't know where your food's coming from, I mean, that has an effect on a person's psyche. And we get to watch people when you're doing that. We have to watch people live out that time of growth. We get to see them live. And so we make it as though that's going to be them forever, and we leave them alone and we don't want to deal with them anymore, instead of realizing, no, they may be just stepping out in faith. They're in that transition period where they like, I don't know where my next meal is coming from, and they're learning to trust God. And in there you make mistakes, and so and we want to stop that. So I would love to just ask 1,000 people, if we could get 1,000 people to give $10, and I'll put and I was talking earlier with somebody to try to figure out how we could do it so that people would know that there's accountability. I don't need nothing. Don't get me to one of the and then we need to get off of this so we can get on some other stuff. But one of the things biblically that the scripture looks for in leaders is that they're not greedy for gain, right? Yeah. And so that's why we talked about a couple of weeks ago. It's important to know the people that labor amongst you. I don't need anything. No one in San Diego can say I ever beat them out of $1. I've never asked, I haven't asked anybody. I've been married for 23 years. I've been with my wife for 25, almost 26 years. And I have never, I don't owe anybody anything. Amen. Right. Amen. And so I only say that to say, I don't need any of the money. Right.
You ain't hey, you trying to on the side make some money here.
No,
it ain't about that.
And what we'll do, even if it's just a Cash App thing, I put my Cash App, and one of the things that thing has accountability built into it. You can see exactly who gives, and those people who give, they can give and leave their email address, and I'll send an email out to everybody who's given to see what money came in and what went out until we can figure out a better system. So just be thinking about that, y'all. If we could do it, or if we could get 10,000 people to give $1. I mean, I don't know, just 1,000 people is what came to my mind.
And my thing, and also in addition to that, what I say is what I always try to tell people, at least far as myself in ministry and things like that, if you want to be a blessing to myself as a pastor, then, just give a donation to the church. You can stop by and visit, give $1, $5, what. I mean, if that's how you want to be a blessing, because we most definitely don't get paid to do this. And that's why we're in a recreation center, because we don't want to run up a bill, you know what I mean? And trying to be smart in how we handle our money and things like that. Otherwise we be barbecuing, and I don't barbecue, I don't have fundraisers, I don't do all that kind of stuff. You don't see me doing that. You don't see me having barbecues. And when we have something like when we had Community Awakening, right? We had free food, right? We didn't charge anybody for food, and everything we did, we paid for, so we don't do this for the money. But most definitely you need support. And a lot of time I think people don't realize that, but then they'll send it to the crooked preacher on TV. They'll send money to them. You'll go to this revival and let that preacher talk you into writing a check for $1,000. But then those is doing the real work kind of overlook that when they're not charging that. It's almost like you got to be crooked just to get support.
And you think about when they did the Black and Brown Mama bailout, that money had to come from somewhere, right?
Exactly.
And those mothers that were locked up needed that. But the people who actually ran that thing and made it happen was doing it out the kindness of their heart. And that's kind of stuff like, let's just not do that. And Sister Tasha says,
our own.
Right. She says, I hear Bishop, and there's no question. So she's saying about the walking in faith. I hear Bishop for sure. But we still have bills, families to support, and we have to eat. And that's real, right? There's activists, and there's several of them that need to eat. Tasha says, Marla, my wife is a CEO. There's no question about it. And then Sister Bowser said, domesticated engineer.
Oh, that's what she said. Yeah.
Hey, leave it up to the wife. This is what it is, brother.
But that's what she used to be.
Yeah. No, that's
with the work.
That's amazing. And so, being a stay-at-home mom is one of the hardest jobs ever. It's being a mom is 24 hours a day anyway, but being a domesticated engineer is 24 hours of hands-on. Right. So shout out to my wife particularly, and to all the mothers who have the ability to be stay-home moms. That's a tough task.
Yes, it is.
And not everybody's able to do it. So shout out to the families that, however it's working for you, is working out. So so let's talk about the first thing on our agenda, and that's ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery. And man, you've talked about it for quite a while. You've been following this movement for a while. And about a month ago, maybe, is when I kind of said, let me
check it out.
Let me see, right? And then I sort of looked, and I didn't really. I Googled something online, and it talked about the Williamson lady running for president, the first one talked about it, or whatever, Michelle, whatever.
Reparations.
Reparations. And so, but there was really nothing. I didn't really see like a movement. I thought it really only had to do with reparations, which is the kind of the main
Black agenda. That's what the real focus is. Yeah.
But I didn't see none of that, right? And so then I don't know what happened. You shared something on Facebook 2 weeks ago.
Video and
And I went to, and then I saw the ADOS 101, ADOS 101. Yeah. And I clicked on that, and then it sent me to now I got this agenda, and this is just a portion of it. This is like this is just myth number one right here, right? I'm like, man, this is crazy. And so I went to it, and I listened to, I believe the brother's name is Antonio Moore. The two people that founded Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore. Antonio Moore graduated from UCLA, Loyola Law School. He's a defense attorney for the past 10 years. And Yvette Carnell writes about politics, wealth, and race. She's the founder of the weekly Breaking Brown political show. Before embarking on a career in the news media, she served as a congressional aide, first to Senator Barbara Boxer, and later to former Congressman Marion Barry. And so she's had many articles featured in Huffington Post, Counterpunch, Your Black World. She's been featured by national news outlets, including but not limited to The Nation, The Guardian, Politico, and so forth. Antonio Moore, phenomenal. They both have podcasts that you can see. And I would recommend that you check them out. Antonio's podcast is, and Antonio's from Los Angeles. Straight, a real brother. Like, you listen to him, you be like, man, I want this brother as my attorney. You know what I mean? He's still very down home. Like you can tell he was raised on the block. His parents had him when he was 16, when they were 16. His mom was still in her 20s, I think, when he graduated from college or something like that. So it's kind of a trip. So he worked as a producer for the Emmy-nominated documentary entitled Cracking the System, presented by Al Jazeera. It tells the story of the effects of mass incarceration, the Iran Contra, and the resulting crack cocaine epidemic that swept across America. If you hear anything about reparations in the media today, it is because of these two. They are the ones that, and there's a lot of people that are against them. A lot of people.
And the reason why, at least from what I've been reading and following, because I follow them on Twitter, and that's where the real activism is going on, and the movement picked up a lot of pace there, is, because they, you have many people fighting for reparations. One group of people is Pan-Africanism, but Pan-Africanism is dealing with it not just with one nation, but around the world, globally, right? And we for that, for Black people around the world. But what their focus is like right here in America, descendants of slavery, us that are descendants of slavery, one parent that's a descendant of slavery, to have an ancestor that was in, in slavery. And there should be a lot of things that are done, right? Reparations just one piece of, or it depends on how you look at reparations, because you hear a lot of people say cut the check, and most definitely cut a check, but there's a lot of other things that need to be done too. And that's when you talk about the Black agenda, when you talk about, Black people who are ADOS, American descendants of slavery, should be treated as a special class people. With all the oppression and discrimination and racism that we have faced since we've been here, we should be treated as a special class people. So when you're going for a job, you're treated as a special class person. When you go for a loan, you're treated as a special class person. When you're going to school, you put on the top of the list.
Flesh that out though, because the truth is, when people hear this, right, the first thing a person will say is, brother, that's just a handout. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, like everybody else did.
Like who?
Right?
Like who else did? That been through what we've been through as Black people in this country.
And that's why those things need to be nuanced, right? Because the average person's mind goes to look at all the other immigrants. That's the first thing. Look at all the other immigrants that came here. Big difference, right? Ding, 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 right? Yeah. Because immigrants are treated differently than the descendants of slaves.
And they get money and all kinds of
absolutely
stuff.
And so taken care of. Absolutely. Yeah. And so when we start looking at stuff like
and then some of them come over because like in El Cajon where I live, you have a lot of Chaldeans, and some of those, I met some of those guys, nice people, but I met some of them, their relatives owned oil wells and stuff back in already. They were already, well off before they came here, plus taking advantage of the system here. So, a lot of times people don't think about that, So when we talk about the Black agenda, you have to address the one term to use, racial wealth gap, between Blacks and whites, and it's way off, And whether you own a home, whether you have a college education, when you look at Blacks and whites equally, when you look at it, they might have the same kind of education, same type of job or whatever, but whites are way ahead than Blacks are. And so if you're going to bring equity, and if you're going to close that racial wealth gap, then there's a lot of things that have to happen. And so all this stuff people talk about, when you feel, when the water come in, all boats rise and all that kind of stuff, bombing everybody was talking about, we know that people always had their foot on Black people. Even folks that come from other countries and other different races step on top of us and get to where they need to get to. And we're still always on the bottom and kept there, deliberately. And I'm talking about American descendants of slavery. So when you're going to address issues, when it comes to us talking about the Black agenda, we want the politicians to understand that, hey, we don't want to hear this stuff talking about everybody. It's going to benefit. No, what specifically are you going to address when it comes to Black people in our agenda? For too long, we've been just voting for Democrats and giving them a free ride. Even Obama gave him a free ride and so on. He was straight up against reparations, everything else. But people loved him because he was Black and so on, but didn't do anything.
So we got you stepping on some toes. Oh, yeah. You stepping on the toes of Obama.
For 8 years, I stepped on toes.
Hey, listen. I think it's important though, man. I think when we start having these conversations, it's important that we look at facts, right? Let's don't get emotional. we don't need to do that. Let's don't get emotional. Right? Let's not do that. And I think that Obama represented something, right? Obama did represent something. We can never take that away. He was the first Black president in the United States, right? But if you really look at
but he wasn't ADOS. He wasn't American descendant of slavery. Right. His father was African, his mom was white. Right. And so he had no real link and connection with us here in America that's come up through that.
And that's why I think it's important that when we talked about in the beginning, should we be aware of it? And I think yes. We need to be aware of it because there's policies and things that are happening. There's an agenda that is set to really disrupt anything that happens in the Black community. And you can see that, right? You can see that in our inability to stay focused on one thing. We all over the place, man. From one week to the next, it is one thing over another. Like we rarely stick to one thing and ride it out until it's complete, right? We wait, and then and that's all I got to do.
Reacting mode rather than being proactive.
We react instead of responding.
But that's what I like about Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell, because they stay focused, and they'll check you real quick.
Very focused. That's important. That's important. So real quick, like, so yes, we should pay attention to it, and sort of here's why. Should we nuance American descendants of slavery versus just Black people in general, right? Is there something different about an immigrant from Africa receiving affirmative action versus American descendants of slaves getting affirmative action, or getting some kind of a deal or some kind of a incentive for application of something, right? Yes, because the American descendants of slaves built the country.
That's right.
Georgetown University, you know what I'm saying, was built by slaves.
White House.
Yeah, White House built by slaves. And so when you look at like what happens when you have affirmative action, why is that necessary? And this is what is so important to look at what has happened since slavery in America, that when white Americans, or when Europeans just took land, really, like when there was this big land grab, they just went across the United States and just started setting up territories. And if you look at, like, I think they say white Americans own like 70% of the land in America.
And then when you narrow it down to the billionaires that's out there, the 5 billionaires, they own like 90. I forget what it was.
They own more land than 90% of every. They own, like, it's ridiculous. And it's not because. And see, this is the thing. That advantage didn't come because white Americans were smarter.
Right. Privilege.
It's privilege. And so when you think of, like, there's a 400 year head start that you had to get the things that you get.
But pull yourself up by the bootstrap, man.
Right. And so when
bootstrap ain't gonna work.
Right. And so when you start looking at like the wealth gap, like, and my daughter asked me the other day, like we had a discussion about just the idea of generational wealth. And it started off with, can Black people be racist towards white people? And so we had that conversation. And so one of the things I talked about is that one of the things that conversation morphed into is that one of the biggest differences, and this is just one, is in this you got to nuance the conversation. All white Americans are not privileged in the same way, right? So you got a majority of the land and wealth in America is owned by white people. So when you look statistically speaking, when at least for you and I, when we speak generally about white people, it's the white people that belong to the statistics, to the majority in the statistic, not all white people, right? Because there are some poor white people that poorer than anybody Black, for sure. You know what I mean? That don't get any type of, they're dirt poor, and they get and I get that. But
and most of the, let me just interject this, and most of the red states, Republican conservatives, these states that they keep voting that way, voting against their interests, are poor states. And they vote against their interests every time because of racism, systemic racism.
Well, if you think about if all these folks have transfer of wealth, how big? Let's say you and I both, we buddies in high school, and you don't know my situation, I don't know yours, and we don't even think about it, right? So then we're going through high school. You're shining in school. You're doing really well, right? And I'm not. And we never talk about it. I just assume it's just the way it is or whatever. Well, I don't know that your parents both got a lot of money. They doing well. You know what I mean? Like, they both educated. They both got college degrees. And, I'm living in a single parent household with somebody that barely got through high school, working 2 minimum wage jobs, 1 or 2 babies at the house or whatever. You got a nanny or a stay-home mom, and I got to watch my brothers and sisters at night when we get home from school because my mom's at a second job, and I got to manage all that, trying to do homework. Right. Well, we don't see all that, right? Society don't see all that. Right. And then when we go to college, I got to depend on a scholarship, which I may or may not have gotten or whatever. If I don't play sports, I may not have gotten it, because who knows if I would have had the grades, because I don't have the support to have the tutors to take all the advanced level courses and to be what I'm so consumed with all kinds of other stuff. But both your parents got college degrees, and their grandparents passed down wealth to their parents, who passed down to their parents or whatever. So your parents went to college from a loan from their grandparents' homes and the wealth that they accumulated over the years. And now you're going to go to college with that same wealth or whatever. So your college is paid for. my college, I may not even be able to go.
Debt that even going to college.
And so you look at, and so when you look at that, like that is a lot of the difference, and a lot of what you see with that is the difference between having generational wealth and just having wealth, period. Like,
and I think when you flip the coin on the other side and you talk about the generations and generations of oppression and discrimination and racism, slavery, then convict leasing, and the Black Code and Jim Crow laws, and then mass incarceration and so on, and everything, through every era, generation, and so on, you always find that the laws that are set is to hurt Black people. You know what I mean? American descendants of slavery. That's the whole animosity in the South, and a lot of these people buy into this narrative of being against Black people. So now 40% of folks in prison are Black folks, right? And you find out about 49% of people in prison are there for drugs. But yet, when you look at Black people, they 12%, they use drugs at a 12% rate, 12%, and it's equal with whites and so on. But yet, when you talk about arrests, Blacks are like 33% of the folks that are arrested, and sometimes as high as 45% of people that's in prison for drugs. So we know that Black people, I'm just using that as one example how Black people are targeted. Then think about it when you as a Black person and then a white person for a loan, when you talk about the redlining, when you talk about even now, when you're talking about going to get a loan at a bank to get a house or to get a car and different things like that. When they give it to you, they charge you this huge interest rate and so on based on what they talk about the credit score, but they damage you in your credit score a long time ago.
And that's if you can even get somebody to give you a loan, because they can judge you based on who you are just in general, whatever,
and where you live,
at 100%. And we don't have banks in the Black neighborhoods where nobody, you know what I mean? Where you but there's this whole idea though of like this generational wealth that's passed down. And we never get ahead because we don't own anything. Yeah. And so what we're going to begin to do, what I want to begin to do, not tonight, today, just like an introduction to what American Descendants of Slavery. I want to encourage you all to go to ADOS101.com. Go there. And then if you can, on iTunes, if you can subscribe to Antonio Moore or Dash Talks, with the apostrophe, Dash Talks, all one word. You can go through. He has almost 2 years worth of podcasts on there with Antonio Moore,
and it helps you to see when you get educated on it. But and as your eyes become open, when you start looking at these politicians, you start seeing how, even though the ones that are real liberal, you think they're for Black people, you start seeing how really racist they are, especially when it comes to finances, when it comes to economics. You will see how the system itself is set up for Black people to really get ahead. You know what I mean? I don't care if it's Sanders or Biden. You go listen what Biden said in the 70s, about reparations and so on, and some of the other comments that he made. And even today, he's not going to address it. Sanders is not going to address it. Others, we'll do this at HR 40 or whatever and things like that, and put a little, try to act like they're addressing it, but they're really not addressing it, because we want to know specifically what you're going to do for the Black agenda. I don't want to talk about, we're going to do this and it's going to benefit everybody. No. What specifically are you going to address, and what you're going to do when it comes to addressing the Black agenda? And a lot of times when it comes to that, people don't care. But Black people continue to vote for these people, put these people off rather than putting pressure on them and so on. So, I mean, my thing is that we got to wake up and we got to be a block vote. I'm telling you now that this movement is growing more and more. A lot of people's eyes are becoming open. I'll give you an example. If Biden becomes president, Trump will probably win, because Biden cannot win without the Black vote. But he's taken us for granted, and that's the thing that Black people have to understand. And that's all a part of the movement. When you talk about ADOS or American Descendants of Slavery, is that it's over with where you get a free ride. It's over with where you don't address the Black agenda. It's over with. You're going to have to address the reparations, or you're going to suffer the consequences at the polls. Yeah. And so people say, oh, no, you can't do that. It can't be just a one issue thing. And you got all these different people, and they use Black people, and to come in and cause a divide, right? With immigration and American Descendants of Slavery, or what you're talking about, what did Joy Reid try to say with MSNBC, that ADOS is trying to oppress the vote, because we telling people don't vote for somebody if they don't address the Black agenda. But she said that's oppressing the vote, trying to oppress the vote, like we some racists down the South somewhere.
The average American family is is worth zero.
Thank you.
In general,
Thank you.
The average American family has zero extra money. Like, get out of here. And this is not about bootstraps. If you look at even for real, the median household net worth by race and education, and this is the first, next week we're going to address the first myth, that if you just educate yourself, just get educated, you'll be okay.
That's the myth.
If you look at post-college, right, white people post-college with a degree are at, on average, 455,000. That's their worth. 455,212. Black people with a degree post-college, 141,115. Right. So we have almost a 400%.
And then what they do, they'll cover this up with what the white folks have, but then they say, look at those black folks right there. They do well.
because what we use is if you look at all the billionaires, the American, I think it's 100,000 millionaires that are black out of the millions of black people that are here versus the millions of millionaires that are black people. I mean, that are white people, right? And so when you look per capita, you can't. You see, here's the thing: my ability to pay my mortgage is not determined on how many black millionaires we got.
Exactly.
So I don't care what Jay-Z has and what Oprah has. And yes, that's good when we had a black president and all that. But the average average black family cannot make it from month to month. And it has nothing to do with the education when you look per capita. When you look at just having in college, 268,000 versus the average black family is 70,000.
Look at that gap.
With some college, just the average white family that has some college is $135,415 of worth. Some college for the average black family, 18,200. 135 versus, so we're talking $117,000 difference between a black person or black family with some college and a white family with some college, with just a high school diploma, with just high school. 118,580 for white families, 6,660 for the average black family. So we're talking, I mean, that is, insane. Less than high school. Somebody who doesn't, with a GED, if you got just a GED, average white family, median household net worth by race is, and this is, and these stats are from the, they're from the feds. It's from the Federal Reserve. Like this isn't like made up.
This
data.
is well researched.
This is not clown data. This is real research data that if you're less than high school, if you got a GED, the average white family is going to be $82,968. Average black family, $2,775 with some college. And so this is one of the things, and I'll say this, and we'll move on because we're going to run out of time. I will say this, that very thankful for the program that we started here in San Diego called Homework for the formerly incarcerated men and women, right? When you come home, part of the thing that we want to do is get you into these trades, because that's one way to bring up this score here with somebody who has either less than high school, you got a GED or a diploma, you ain't gonna be able to make it on 2007.
I think, at least from my perspective, is that, especially with this report that you're reading, and if everybody read that whole report, they'll see, is even if you do what you say you're going to do, and I know you're going to do it as far as helping folks and things, even if you help a whole lot of people, still going to be a gap, the wealth gap between blacks and whites. And that's the problem. What we're trying to say is that all these different things we throw out there, you're not going to fix it. So that's why we got to have a black agenda. That's why we got to talk about reparations, because we need to be made whole.
And that's why we can't. That's why we have to nuance the discussion.
Yeah,
we can't just lump everybody black into one thing. You have to make a distinction. The American descendants of slavery that are the ones that built the system that we have today. The ones that built the systems, that all the immigrants that come from other countries. We can't lump everybody together and because everybody's not at the same disadvantage. Last thing I'll say, and we can move on. I was at an event that was hosted by some brothers from East Africa, and I was there in uniform. It was a guy there from the county, and then a lawyer that was there to talk about immigration stuff with like the rent and stuff like that. Because, folks over in City Heights get clowned a lot with the rent and don't understand what's going on. It's like first generation Africans and stuff. That's like, man, these people are getting me or whatever. Well, one of the guys that was in the meeting grabbed the microphone and he started like going in, and he didn't want to give up the mic, and he was really upset about the way that the government is treating his family when it comes to like rent, and we can't afford to be here, and I didn't know then like kind of what I know now. I wasn't thinking that way now, and it's not even an anger thing. It wasn't, but I wish that I would have knew then, because I would have said, well, welcome to America. Like this is how American descendants of slaves been feeling this way forever.
And here's the thing: I was reading an article the other day that it was a guy who was an immigrant. When you say immigrant, came from the country, but he's in America and was talking about reparations and all that. And he's it's fine. It is get reparations, whatever. He said, well, what we really need to talk about is the reparations that America needs to make whole these other countries that they damn. They talk about Africa and things like that. And so my thing is with that is that, and here's another myth, is that a lot of times people try to say, and many of us were kidnapped from Africa, but many of us were sold. So the way I feel about it, Africa need to make us whole too.
Yeah.
You sold my ancestors and brought them over here.
You break bread too, Africa.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, and let's get this straight. And Tasha said Obama gave reparations to indigenous folks, Holocaust survivors, and Philippine veterans, right? For sure. Jewish people, the whole nine. Everybody got reparations.
We always on the bottom. People always standing on us.
But I think we got to remember too, Africa is a continent.
That's
Africa
right.
is not a country. Right. Africa has 52 different countries.
Nigeria and some of the other countries.
Africa got 52 countries within it, dude. And we look at that.
Exactly.
We look at that entire continent.
And some say it could be 54.
But the point is, it's like 4 million miles square, 400 million or something. Correct.
Exactly.
Africa is humongous.
Yeah.
But in order to shrink it, because that's what America does, right? You got to shrink it to be on the globe too, but at the same time, it make it look like it's the same size as America. You can put everything in America and some inside of Africa. So we need to understand that too. Like it,
and it's really, if I can remember the term, Africa is really called Ekabulan, and the term Africa, the Rome gave them that term, but it's really I think it's called Ekabulan.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother topic. So that's just an intro, and we'll spend one of the topics we'll do every week is we'll address one of the myths about what it means. And so next week we're going to look at like the education thing. We'll kind of dig more into that, ADOS, and it's just for us to get to thinking, right? We'd love for you guys to push back. That's perfectly fine. That's okay if you want to do that. We're studying and getting to know this stuff. So next thing we want to talk about is Gun Violence Prevention Weekend. What does that mean for our community what does that mean for us? And so you want to touch on some of the gun violence stuff, and you just wrote an article.
Yeah, I just wrote an article, and I did a little video today also on it.
That's what made me want to put it up here.
Yeah, my thing is when we talk about gun violence and prevention and so on, is a lot of times we don't address the overall issue of violence, right? Okay. Whether somebody gets stabbed, beat down. So the culture in America is a violent culture, right? Okay. And so therefore, guns is a means that is used where people get killed. So that's why it's more talked about, widely spread and talked about, is because the damage that guns can do. But the real issue is violence and people being violent. And so when we address gun violence, when we talk about gun violence prevention, there are 4 things that I talked about today. Is that you got when you talk about gun violence, preventing gun violence and addressing the gun violence issues, you got to look at drugs and alcohol, because a person get drunk or on drugs and things like that. A lot they're more inclined to use a gun if they have a gun, right? You got to look at mental health issues. You got to look at poverty. That's the one I'm always pushing, because what we're talking about here, you got to address poverty. Because a lot of times, so why are those folks over there? And one of the things I said, why are those folks over there, the black folks over there killing each other, and so on and so on. And the thing I always say is, well, if you have the same rate of poverty, it's been proven through research, you have the same rate of poverty in a white community, you got the same level of crime, the same level of violence, right? And so a lot of times people don't look at the underlying issues, the trauma and different things that folks are facing and dealing with that, right? And so you got to address that. And of course, we got to look at the gang issue, what some folks call now group violence and things like that. You got to look at that, or individual violence. You got to look at those issues if you're going to address gun violence prevention. So one of the things that, with the article that we're writing that I wrote is trying to bring resources into the community through CALVIC, California Violence Intervention and Prevention. And since 2007, the money had not even been raised. It's like $9 million. You're talking about all the California, one of the richest and largest in population, largest population in America, and has one of the I think the 5th in the world as far as its economy. And so you put in $9 million to address violence, right? The state. And then this year, Governor Newsom moved it up to 27 million. And we saying that's good, but make sure that the legislation keep it there or even make it higher. And the push is try to push it to about $39 million to address violence throughout the state of California, where we can get those kind of resources here. Not only can we be able to do mentoring, but the work that we do with disrupting the violence in the community, but then start getting underneath all of that and addressing some of the underlying issues that are taking place, that are happening in our community. It ain't going to fix everything, but if you're talking about gun violence and preventing it, then you got to address the underlying issues. And we need resources to do that. And so this week was Wear Orange, Friday to Sunday, Wear Orange, in gun violence. And so you have different types of violence, right? Mass shootings. And sometimes that comes through terrorism, and sometimes it comes through other means, other avenues, and so on. But you do have mass shootings that need to be addressed. But you also have community violence shootings that need to be the gun violence that you need to address right in our communities, whether it's domestic gang, whatever category of arguments, whatever category you want to put it in. When you talk about community, you got to address the community violence, and then you also got to address police violence, right? Because I feel myself, I feel more threatened from the perspective, I don't think anybody can get shot, right? Especially depending on the life that you're living and so on. But me and you, as people that's trying to be people of peace and not creating kind of trouble, I think I have just a greater risk of being shot by a random person on the street that's being shot by the police. So, we got to address police violence, gun violence also, because that is an issue and that is a problem. With one of the
shout out to AB 392.
Exactly, because they're holding accountable. And so a lot of times we put ourselves in silos, right? We put ourselves in silos over here,
we blame the community
over here. And what we need to be doing is having a coalition where we're working together on all these issues to address these issues and so on.
One of the problems I think that, is, again, we can't push past it. And we need to have coalitions with everything, right? I mean, let's face it. The best way to do anything is to work together in coalitions. We are extremely siloed. I was talking to a friend of mine today, and we were talking about an idea that she has, one of our family friends, and she was going to start something on her own. And she was like, I'll just start my own 501c3. And I said, nah, there's enough 501c3s. Mm-hmm. Let's do some probing, find out who's doing something even close to what you're doing, so that y'all not fighting over the same $3,000. And so we join together and say, let's get 100,000 instead of me and you breaking up our friendship over a $3,000 grant.
Right.
And now we racing down to see who can take a picture with the mayor fastest or whatever to get the grants, right? Who can sell out the most just to get the three. And we don't need to do that.
Right.
So we need to not be siloed. We need to be clicking up with these other organizations and people. But the problem is that there needs to be honesty with these other folks.
Yes.
See, it's one thing to say we need to link up with the police. Perfect. But they got to be honest, though.
Yeah.
It's one thing we got to link up with Summer Stephan. But are you willing to be honest, though? Mm-hmm. And that's the thing for me. And those are and eventually we'll talk about that too, because I think that that's important for us to address. Like, what do the optics look like when we've been smashing on Summer Stephan this whole time, and then somebody sees a picture of you standing next to her? Are we? Do we have enough? I don't even know what you would call it. I don't want to say wisdom, because that's not it. But do we have enough, whatever, to be able to nuance that conversation and say what actually happened, right? Because what actually happened? What did you actually have to do in order to make that happen? Or did you hold her feet to the fire? And you see what I'm saying? But what do we do with the optics of that later on or whatever? And so we need to have those conversations because folks want to know that type of stuff, right? And we'll stop messing with each other over something instead of just asking, hey, I want to talk to you about this, man. I'm, whatever. And that's just the closest example, because your relationship with that office, Summer Stephan had to make right what Bonnie DeMonis messed up. So it's not like Summer, she didn't fight that. She just was obedient to what the bill said, right? Like, it's not like she wasn't doing no favor. Or was she?
She did do a favor, yeah, absolutely.
So tell me what happened.
After
what happened?
Could look.
And we're talking about Kent, the brother that Bonnie gave 75 to life.
I don't want to ruffle feathers the wrong way, but sometimes I think,
and that's not the point of it. It's just,
I think sometimes folks, get upset about certain things because they still licking their wounds.
Okay.
And we there's some things we got to be smarter about, right? And I think, like with me, I supported Genevieve, right? Publicly blasted the DA's office and everything. Summers and
as did I.
Campaign.
She's still my DA.
Yeah, and so I did all that. And so when this issue came up, as far as to Kent reached out to me and told me that a law changed where the DA can actually recall the sentence and check, see if the DA is willing to do it. And so, I mean, I could have, when I reached out to Summers could have actually said no, nor me gave me some kind of political spin on denying it and so on because of what I've done. And I was concerned about that because, like, wait, let's see what happens here. But no, she immediately said, hey, let me look into this. And then she assigned someone to do it. And then we see what has happened. And I think what people don't see, and a lot of times, and I think, a lot of it has to do with where people are mentally, you know what I mean? The way they think. So what people see is like they hate her, right? And anything they have to do it, I don't want to do it. I don't have any permanent enemies and I don't have any permanent allies, only issues, right? And so when you look at this, and this is the first time we didn't even really realize how big this was. This is the first, under this law, this is the first person that was released on that. I mean, you have the assembly person want to bring Ken up to Sacramento and stuff to have press conference on this. And the late Hillary Blount, who actually wrote the law, she was a former prosecutor, and she came down yesterday, and and Kent was able to meet some of his grandkids he hadn't met yet and things like that. So that was wonderful and beautiful. She came out, she flew all the way down from Oakland to do that. So this is bigger than that. And then after that, one thing she told me, she got thousands of people who have petitioned her under this law. And a lot of them are right here in San Diego, right? And so sometimes we got to see things, we got to be able to see the bigger picture of, we talk about mass incarceration and doing something about it. Now I can see, if we get a play where I don't want to do none of it, then yeah, we expensive. But if you're going to work with us to bring change and to get a lot of these brothers and sisters out of prison that's been unjustly locked up, then let's do that and let's address those issues.
One of the things that I think is important is that we, because here's what the fear is, right? Here's what the fear is. I think, I mean, I can't speak for everybody. I don't know. But what I would imagine is, because I look at my own trust issues, right? People that I don't trust, and I'm like, I'm not. So I'm just.
And that's okay.
No, but I'm just going. I'm just going off of the way that I typically deal with an issue or somebody that I don't trust, right? The issue is, okay, are you doing this one thing right here, but you're going to be doing 15 other bad things right here? And so are you using these small, and they're not small decisions. Ask Kent. Ask Kent how small that decision was. You feel me? That's a big deal.
Yeah.
The brother, you know what I mean?
Right.
We was at the event. We were, by the way, brother, congratulations on the Visionary Award. We were at your award. Thank you. And ironically, the award was for your ability to collaborate. But I was talking to Kent, and Kent was, and I want to work. I got to do it. This brother's ready to get, and I said, man, just take some time and relax. I said, man, you haven't walked on carpet in over 17 years. Yeah. And he stopped for, and I was like, bro, just, and so my point is that that sometimes could be the trouble too. And I think that's where there has to be, number one, conversation. We got to keep the lines of communication open between us, the people that are on the front lines together. And there has to be good dialogue, because, and then there has to be this recognition, I believe, that at the end of the day, all this political BS, look at all the issues that we're fighting, right? Being able to look at all the issues, but Kent's issue, he came home. And so what is that worth? And I think that's where, because we don't do a really good job communicating. Sometimes we may,
and not only that, man, but I think, you know, I mean, look, you know, my thing was during the campaign, I was for Genevieve, right?
Me too, and I still am,
and so
I still am.
So,
you know,
was, you know,
I get it. She in Summers a DA. I understand that, but I'm just the type. I'm loyal like that. So you know what I mean. I'm loyal like that,
right? And so,
and it's not a disloyalty for you, but I no. So I'm not trying to call you out.
No. And so, I mean, I clearly understand that, but I'm talking about even during the campaign when you, sometimes I think we don't, with me, I think you need to give credit where credit is due.
100%.
And the Bible says that. And the only side I'm really on is God's side doing the right thing.
For sure.
But if you're doing 15 oppressive things out here, we're going to have an issue, right? But what I wanted to bring up is even, and I hope Tasha's still on it, even during the campaign, when Summers was running for office with the shot spotters. We had an issue with that, and Tasha reached out to Summers, and because we found out that the DA's office was funding it was before she got in there. The DA's office was funding for the shot spotters, right? The where they pick up the gun, stop shots, the sound of shots, but also they have mics on there where they can surveillance and listen to your conversation and things like that. And they have picked those things up and use them in court, and that's it's only in the Black community. And Black and brown, but mostly Black, because they put it in where it's highly populated with Black folks. Encounter got like 22% Black people, you know, versus overall San Diego 6%. And so those are areas, Paradise Hills, those are areas they put these shot spotters, and found out the DA's office was funding it. And Tasha reached out to Summers and said, hey, don't fund them anymore. She looked into it and came back and said, I'm not going to fund this because it hasn't got the community buy-in. So I'm pulling the money out.
Did she actually pull the money out?
Yeah, to my understanding. Yes, and so I think last time I checked during this year, that's what I said. Yeah, they don't fund that anymore that I know of.
And I agree wholeheartedly. My thing is this: you said something, and then we're at our time. You said something that I think is important, man. To number one, let's keep talking. Mm-hmm. We got 1,000 issues that are going on, and finally we're getting traction. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, so many great things happening in our in D4, 8, 9, and all the rest of this part of the city that has Black people and minorities in general. And a lot of good things are happening. A lot of we have traction like I haven't seen in a long time in D4. You know, shout out to Monica Montgomery, but also DA.
Hopefully she feels better.
Yeah, and I'll check on her, and I think she's due some type of a congrats, because she's been putting it down. She has a lot of pressure on her that we don't see, so we need to do something for her. Stop asking. We made a bunch of demands, if you will, and I think she's more than fulfilled her duty to stand the way that she said she was going to stand.
She rose to the occasion,
and so I think we need to do something. But I think let's continue to talk. Let's not let. My thing is like, man, look, if you, I got to give you the benefit of the doubt of having a bad day, or either you're off on an issue or I am. Yeah, we can't afford to. I don't want to throw our relationship away quick, and so we have to be careful with some of the hard stands that we take on certain things, and just learning how to navigate some of these spaces, and you know, and not forget that at the end of all this stuff. There are a lot of lives at stake, but there's one, you know, Kent got a benefit from this relationship, and it's worth it.
And a whole lot more people could this could really do something.
They are right, and they will. And so we just have to hold these politicians' feet to the fire, and you know, we need to begin to talk again about, let's get this cash bail stuff. Like, stop doing that. Like, so you can stop having, we don't have to have all these new laws. If you get rid of some of the foolishness that's happened throughout the years or whatever, we need to have those conversations.
But when they have, and I know we run out of time, but even with cash bail, you know, with ACLU, I supported their bill when it came out, but when I went to their workshop, whatever it was, and saw, I said, look, this is like, I don't really agree with this, but I'll support it, you know. And then I guess they made some changes up there that everybody was kind of coming against it because he took some. But when I heard how, I said, that was my understanding of what the bill was anyway, even before they made the changes. And so a lot of times, because certain people are supporting certain things, we just jump aboard without looking at the details. And so I'm the kind of person that I don't care who, what, or whatever. If it doesn't seem right to me, I'm going to say, hey, and I'm a team player. So I said, I'll still support, I'll promote it, but I got some issues over here with some of this stuff over here. you know, and of course they said we got to start somewhere. And I agree with that. And that's with anything, you got to start somewhere and see where it goes, right? Everything is about trust and building that trust and working on that trust. And it's on all sides, on both sides of the spectrum when it comes to that. But the one thing that I for sure I think I was sharing with you, I have politicians, the chief, and all these people need to understand I have a bark without a bite, right? I'm not harmless, but yeah, I'm going to scream loud. I'm going to cry loud and spare not. But
that's Perry Story's thing. Cry loud and spare not. She posts that on everything.
Oh, does she?
So I got my car painted today, Perry. Cry loud and spare not. I call it a prophetess.
There you go. But you know, but harmless, you know, and love everybody. I don't care if my enemy. I love my enemies. I love everyone. I don't mean harm to anyone, but I'm going to speak out. Just like before we close, I feel like, you know, when it comes to addressing the issues in the Black community, and when it comes to addressing issues like gun violence, we're talking about things like that. The Commission on Gang Prevention and Intervention needs to step it up, you know, especially when it comes to the issues of dealing with Black people, you know. And I you know, when Reverend Ricky Lass was there, we clashed too, but at least he was communicating and connected with the Black community. I don't see that now, and so something has got to happen with that, or shut the commission down because they ain't doing nothing. I saw Reverend Gerald Brown, and I appreciate the CAB and Brian Pollard, because they did send like 30 recommendations for policy change, and some of those issues that I put in there, like pretext stops and different things like that, they added some of those things. So we know we're not going to get all that, but I appreciate them doing that. So while they're doing that, let's support them and let's push it, because that's the kind of change we want to bring, right? They listen, but I don't think that the Gang Commission is listening. But, you know, Reverend Gerald Brown, and Brian Pollard, at least thus far. Barry Pollard. Yeah, I don't know why I would say Brian. Right. Barry Pollard. They're listening, and they did put. I don't know if you read the report. They submitted 38 changes. Police Association doesn't like it, but when I saw it, I loved it. I was like, let's do this. Even if, you know, we only get 3 out of 30, you know, let's do this, and so on. So we got to support that. But they got to do a better job in communicating with us and letting us know what's going on, like Monica does and some of the others. And I don't know how effective they're going to be in that. They got to get out in the community, and they got to communicate with us and let us know how we can support them to help them get this stuff through.
Got you. Well, that's good stuff. And I'll just, I guess, close by saying, you know, let's remember that this is a marathon.
Amen.
Thank you. Actually, it's in the words of the scripture. Actually, the Bible says the race isn't given to the swift,
that's right,
nor to the strong, but to the one who endures to the end. Nipsey coined the phrase, or the idea of marathon, that it's a marathon, run your race.
Amen.
He coined the phrase, but the principle, I believe, belongs to God.
Amen.
And let's just remember that. Let's preserve the relationships. Let's be slow to anger, slow to wrath, quick to listen, slow to speak.
And like with me, you know, just to say the one last thing, you know, use the example of Chief Nisley. I don't care too much for him. I ain't fooling with him. But some of the coalitions I'm a part of still meet him. So I say, dude, let's see what you can do.
Right, but you ain't going.
Yeah, exactly.
You ain't having no
exactly until I see some changes. But right. But I'm still part of coalition that still go in there and like, hey, do your thing, do what you got to do. Right. And that's the way we got to do it. You know, we got to, be able to work it inside and out. You know, and some of us have some issues that we know on a personal level that goes deeper, and like, nah, I'm not wasting my time on that. You know, unless, like you said, I see some change where that trust can be built back up.
Well, again. And let's just not forget. I don't want to miss this last point. That we can, and we'll end it with this, if you don't mind. Do you have anything else? We'll end with this. It takes a lot to stand consistently against a system that's inherently designed to crush you. Yeah. It's not designed to defeat you. It's designed to crush you.
Thank you.
And it's difficult to stand on a regular basis against that type of system. It's designed to create chaos in the communities that it's oppressing. That oppression plays itself out in damaged relationships, misunderstandings, misspeaking, all these things, right? And I think we need to be aware of that while we're moving. And that's the reason why we need to support those people that are out there on the front lines on a regular basis.
That's right.
That are giving their life and health. You got some of the people, and they don't share all this stuff on Facebook, but there's folks that like have new weird allergies where they breaking out in hives and throats are swelling up, and a lot of that stuff is stress induced. There's folks that are up all night advocating and fighting and still getting calls to go to the homes and to the hospitals and suffer a lot of vicarious trauma. And so I want for us to remember that as we seek to raise some type of funds to be able to help some of these folks to pay their cell phone bills and to put gas in their car. So I'm asking if we could get 1,000 people to give $10, and we will track it. There's the app that I'll use, and I'll post it at the end of this. I'll make a separate post, but to do that. And if you don't want to do it, don't worry about it. It's no big deal, but we'll have as much accountability so everybody will know, and we'll ask that you leave your email address so that we can email you a bi-weekly or a monthly thing to show you what all money's coming in, what's going out. I have no reason to take, I don't need nothing. If I, you know what I mean? But so we want you all to do that. That's the first ask, is that if we could get 1,000 people just to give $10 for now, just so that we could give a little relief. Some of these folks, the cell phones is finna get cut off, and just simple stuff like an oil change. It's like, man, you'd be surprised how, how hard it is for somebody to decide, do I want to get a little bit of groceries, some bread, or some lunch meat, or this oil change? Well, let me let and now you at 6,000 miles, and now you see what I mean? So think about that. And then we're going to work on a more permanent solution to be able to give a little bit more generously. But if we could do that, so look for a post that's going to come out. I'll tag everybody that's in the video here to give. But again, thank you all. We're at a minute and 10, a minute and 1 hour and 10 minutes, 11 minutes. So thank you all for the few of you that stayed. We appreciate you. Everybody that joined in, made comments. Man, as always, man, have a great week. You could have been anywhere, but you decided to be with us. And so we want to tell you we appreciate you. So thanks a lot. We love you. God bless you. Bam. Ending.